I mean, this is one iron law I'll give you. Here's the iron law, Bob. You ready? All right.
I'm ready.
Darwin was right in the respect that it's the most adaptable that survive. So if you're adaptable in a role, if you're adaptable at a company, you can learn new things. You can offer value in different ways or become an expert in your domain. That's what makes you stand out, and that's what makes you thrive once you're employed.
Welcome to Security Cleared Jobs, Who's Hiring and How, the podcast for cleared professionals looking for new opportunities and career advice. We go behind the scenes with recruiters and hiring managers from leading cleared employers to uncover the information you need to make a smart career move.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Security Cleared Jobs, Who's Hiring and How. My name is Bob Wheeler. I'm your host from ClearedJobs.Net. And we are super excited today to have a guest with us. His name is Mark Fogel. He is the Director of Talent Development and Communications at a company called Mile2. Hey, Mark, how you doing today?
Hey, Bob, I'm pretty well. How are you?
We're doing great, man. Doing great. Why don't we start off, though, just first and just introduce yourself. I mean, I know that you've got a pretty diverse background. You've done some military stuff, some private sector stuff. Tell us about Mark.
Yeah, short version, I think like a lot of your listeners, the path was long and winding, but fun and with some starts and stops. So my first gig, if you will, was in the Air Force flying airplanes, and kind of thought that's what I'd do forever. And then I got to the point one time when I did the kind of proverbial, wake up one day and think, oh, what's next? I think I want to do something a bit different. So had an opportunity to go back to school. And then from there, joined a large Fortune 500 company that pretty well known for its leadership development and veteran support, and had a chance to do some exciting, fun things there, even though it was going very well and loved the job, quite frankly. Had a chance to come to a smaller company, start something big and scale it, and get into human capital with us here at Mile2. So that's the short version, Bob.
All right. Well, hey, so now we know a little bit about you. Let's learn a little bit more about what Mile2 does. I mean, I know that you guys are kind of going to go the extra mile for your customers, is what you like to say. But what are your customers? What does Mile2 do, in the big picture?
We're a human-machine teaming company. So what does that mean? Fundamentally, we are solving customer problems with custom software, and it lives at the intersection of humans and people, machines, and work. And so examples of the kind of stuff that we would do, if you're trying to build an interface for a warfighter to control a number of, say, small UAS that are guarding a base or a post, we would build the interface so that the member can make smarter decisions, better, more efficient processes with that interface. We've also had software that's been on pilot knee pads that they control an uncrewed F-16 flying out of Edwards. So we've got software that's out there live doing work right now.
That's great. A lot of this stuff, software, I mean, I'm assuming they're software developers, but a lot of different things go into actually doing the business. So what kind of roles does Mile2 employ? What kind of, especially the cleared roles, what kind of stuff are you typically looking for over the course of a year?
Great question and good point. Like software engineers, absolutely. You could call that bread and butter, but we also, if you kind of imagine the pie chart of who works here and their functions and backgrounds, beyond software engineers, we've got experts in UX, UI, so user experience, user interface designers, cognitive systems engineers, so experts that I kind of describe it as working at the intersection of human factors engineering, psychology, systems engineering. They understand how humans and machines will interact and work. We have AI, ML specialists, folks in the corporate space and the support staff from finance and HR like myself, DevSecOps. It kind of runs the gamut, and that's a lot for 90 people. I mean, we're a 90-person company. But if you can imagine those big giant companies, those tech and software companies that are in the tens of thousands, we're like that, but just kind of scaled down.
Yeah. Clearance-wise, are your positions, are they all over the map with clearances? Are you specifically lower level or higher level? What's your clearance level look like?
Yeah, it is kind of all over the map, and I'll describe why or the benefit of that here briefly. The software engineer, the designer, those that are doing the work by way of building the interfaces, writing the algorithms, it vacillates. It's between secret and TSSCI. It's about 50-50, I think, on any given day. But we love any individual that has a clearance because, and this is key, and I can't overemphasize it, being 90 people, and frankly, even if we were 1,000 or 10,000, if you have a clearance, you can put on the different hat on a different day. So I have one by virtue of having been in the Air Force and flying jets. And I'm on the HR team. But because I have a clearance, I can help and work with our project teams that are working on aviation challenges. It helped me stand out back in the day when I was coming here 4.5 years ago. And for those that are looking for opportunities, even if the role doesn't necessarily require a clearance, it of course is great to have one, especially at a smaller company like ours.
Yeah, great way to look at that as a benefit. And I think it obviously it makes Mile 2 look good for, I don't know if I want to say thinking outside the box, but you're doing things to maximize the value out of everybody. That's pretty cool stuff. We've talked about what you do and who you hire. Next question is always like, where are you hired? I know you're located in Dayton, Ohio, but are all of your jobs in the Ohio area? Are your jobs other places as well? What's the location look like? And also anything that's a remote or hybrid is always a question our listeners want to know about.
Yeah, we're remote friendly, and that's a bit of a differentiating factor for us, especially being tech, especially being government contractor, serving the military client and the government. We have some roles, of course, that require someone to be customer facing on a site, perhaps in a skiff. But we have other roles where we're happy that if you're doing a great job, we don't care where you live here in the United States. So we have folks coast to coast. Our headquarters is here in Dayton, Ohio, but and that's where the plurality of our folks are geographically. But otherwise, we're excited for great folks, no matter where they reside, as long as they're able to serve the customer and do a super job. It's an outcome view on employment, which I know the trend is slightly reversing back to more of the hybrid, especially in GovCon. To be clear, I mean, there's a value and a virtue in being able to get our customers to interact with our folks. And so when that makes sense and delivers value for our customers, we do have that. But we're remote friendly.
So let's talk a bit about just the company culture. You've said things like the culture is how you feel. I was taking a look at your LinkedIn, the company LinkedIn page. A lot of cool stuff on there. You got a great website too. That's got a lot of stuff on that. That looks. All of those sites look like they're really well kept up to date. There's good stuff on there. But besides checking out a website, this is a good chance for you to kind of give us more information about Mile 2 and the company culture. How would you describe it?
I get a chance to meet with all of our new employees as they come on board. And as part of the onboarding, we have a conversation around culture. And I tell everyone the same thing that I also tell my students. I've taught organizational culture to MBA students. You can line up 20 of the world's leading scholars on organizational culture, and you'll have 20 different definitions. There is, of course, no one definition. And so, I sort of off the cuff will use, how you feel on any given day. We could talk to a lot of different factors, but that how you feel point is if you feel valued, if you feel included, if you feel that what you are doing makes a difference for your stakeholders and your team, if you see an issue, a problem, not only are you given an opportunity to raise the hand and say, hey, I see something wrong, but is there an expectation that you do that? And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about our values. Now, I'm sure, as you know, Bob, what company doesn't have values, right? Somewhere written on their webpage, on the walls of their building. I've been pretty fortunate to work only in places that have been fairly value-oriented. But even the military, let's be really blunt. I mean, just because the values were emphasized and very salient doesn't mean that every single person at all times was adhering to those values by way of their behaviors and principles and so forth. What we do is we try to make sure that those values are very real, and they go into everything we consider. So if someone's doing an excellent job and there's conversation around a potential promotion, maybe they're going to become a manager of others, the first question that we would ask either on the HR team or also with the C-suite and the executives is, well, how are they by way of exemplifying our values? Do they teach others? Are they eager to learn? Are they making sure that everyone else feels respected and heard, as an example? And honestly, we've had fantastic, smart people who, because they were not living up to our values, we've had to say goodbye to. And that's easy to say, but often for firms, it's hard to take action on, and we do that. So that emphasizes what I would say is how our folks would describe our culture. It is very much people first. If we're doing great work and generating many tens of millions in revenue, but people are not thriving, if they're not flourishing in their life, then what's the point? And that also comes down to, quite honestly, our sole owner at this point. He was one of the co-founders. He bought out his partners. At the end of the day, that's his value. That's his persona. That's his mindset on it, that conscious capitalism perspective, that you can have a thriving company financially, on the IRS statements. But if the people there don't feel like they're doing well, then then why get into that game of building something and executing? Otherwise, it's just a money grab, and that's no fun for anyone, even the owner. But that's how I describe it. That's a long version, but there's even longer versions. That's a good way to kind of hit it here.
Dude, I love the long version, and as I was thinking as you were talking about this, so you bring up some of our military past and stuff like that. You know what? Every company has values, whether they state them or not. I mean, values exist, like you're saying. And it sounds like mile 2, here I'm going to use the pun, goes the extra mile to actually state those things, because if you don't state them up front, they're going to become what they become. They're going to become, negative values because the culture just kind of is hanging out in nowhere land. But
yeah,
I got more and more excited the more you talked about that, Mark, because I could really tell that the company not only took the time to state those things, but I could see how you're putting those things into practice and making business decisions about those things. And you just sounded very, very, very convinced and very convicted by that. And I think that came right across. So good on you guys, man. Hey, we can move a little bit towards a little bit of a military thing. A lot of folks, you and I are both veterans. A lot of veterans are on here. We like to ask questions about SkillBridge. And you said that Mile 2's got about 90 people there. So your SkillBridge opportunities are kind of, I don't want to say hit and miss, but they've got to have the right fit for something, right? You want to pull this apart for me a little bit?
Yeah. Long story short, we try to be, we don't want to be overly prescriptive with what kind of individual we would bring on for what we call a fellowship. I know technically it's considered an internship, our style of SkillBridge, but I don't feel like that word does justice for the kind of folks that we're bringing on. At any given time, we're interested to see someone that might be able to come in and offer value across a range of disciplines or functions, whether it's software engineering, cybersecurity, finance, business development, you name it. Again, we are a tech firm, right? So there's a lot of SkillBridge opportunities out there for the trades, construction, and so forth. And those are really valuable. You can get credentials. For us, our mindset's pretty simple. We're always going to have kind of that standing advertisement, if you will, that we're looking and considering SkillBridge fellows. But unless we, in good faith, feel that at the end of that SkillBridge period, if there's no real probability, and I'd say a strong probability of us needing a full-time hire, we don't want to have the SkillBridge fellow because I think the spirit of the program should be not just that you come in, a quick touch and go, learn a couple things and move on. It's that the hiring organization, the hosting organization should, again, in good faith, be ready and able and willing to make a full-time offer. So we've only had, and I say only, it's been a great success. We've only had 2 fellows, but in both cases made an offer. And one took it, one did not. We're 50-50, flip of the coin. And the one who did is chief of staff, very senior role, and doing an excellent job. And so we are, I think, a lot of companies out there, we're like a lot of companies that are viewing it as, we're trying to do the right thing. And if there's, someone has a cybersecurity background, there's plenty that are in the military. But unless we would need to enlarge that team, then we would just have to say the right thing is to say, not right now, sorry, but there's plenty of opportunity out there elsewhere.
That goes right back to your values. I mean, it sounds like you guys are putting that into practice. So that's good stuff.
It's a great program. I mean, you know about it as well as anyone that our national security infrastructure, the Congress, put together this program, put money behind it. And it's as close to a free lunch as there is in the world of the private sector and various organizations. And I think a lot of firms might accidentally approach it that way rather than the spirit of the program, which is to really give someone an opportunity for full-time employment.
So let's talk about some hiring stories. I mean, you're a talent. You used to fly jets. Now you are the talent acquisition director there. Do you have any cautionary tales to share about any job seekers that you can learn from?
There's a lot of well-intentioned but probably poor advice that's out there, especially on LinkedIn, which I love LinkedIn, by the way, but I see a lot of bad wisdom, if you will. And one of the things I see a lot is that if you apply at a company, you don't get the role, don't get the opportunity, there's no offer extended, then that company has an obligation to give you feedback and explain why you didn't. Just right off the bat, that's just not practical. That's a service. I'd love to be able to help every applicant. We have hundreds, sometimes thousands. Big companies have millions of resumes that they get. It's just not a feasible strategy. So we would have some time, or recent history had an applicant who did hit, checked all the main boxes by way of the minimum qualifications. and wrote and said, gosh, I don't understand. I thought this was going well. I thought, I had all the qualifications. Why didn't I get an offer? And because we had gone a little bit through the process, we try to give some custom responses when it makes sense and when we can. And I explained that just because you met the qualifications doesn't mean that 500 other people didn't also meet the qualifications. And sadly, that's often the case. And so there are other differentiating factors that may have come into play, as well as sometimes we just end up not needing a particular role. That's rare, thankfully, that we would have to just kind of cancel a job. But so the listeners out there, just because you are qualified for something, and you are qualified for so many great things, of course, there's a lot of luck that comes into play. And there's a lot of your peers and colleagues and others out there who are also qualified. So it's all about standing at differentiation, add that bit of luck as well, which sadly is reality. And that's what's going to determine whether you get an offer or an opportunity, vice just being qualified for something. So that's one. Obviously could go on quite a bit about some cautionary tales, especially from vet. I heard one of your recent guests actually talking about the long resume, and that this is shockingly a growing trend. I notice. If you're a 4-star general and you're applying, I still want 2 pages max. Unless you're applying for academia, you're trying to become a teacher in an institution of higher education. That's a CV. That's an academic CV. That's many pages. Otherwise, it's 2 pages max. Most people, it's 1 page. And what I emphasize to folks, much like some of your guests have said in the past, but it still sadly does not seem to be a strength of most transitioning veterans, is if you are qualified for a role, as the recruiting professional, as a talent acquisition professional, the moment I spot your resume in the system, I want your qualification for my job to hit me like a 2x4 in the head. It has got to smack me in the face. It is about being hyper explicit and overt about your background and why that means you are fit for this role. And so often I find that people are uploading kind of generic resumes, and the more anyone that's screening resumes has to sift through that noise, they're more likely to just move on. It's just a function of time and attention. That is a human limitation. And now you might think, well, alternatively, if that's too much time and attention for one human, well, what can we do by way of AI or other algorithmic support? But that's a pro and a con as well. And I think, like some of your past guests have said, we do have a system that will screen out obvious no's for a job. In other words, if we put in there like, hey, you need a security clearance and you need a TSSCI that's active today, and if you say no, you don't have that, like you're just out. Like we just need it. It's a hard requirement. And so it moves into the other pile. We don't see it. But otherwise, we actually look with human eyes on every single candidate's application. And there's just no time to sit there, 24 hours a day and read resumes. So long story longer, hit people in the face with a 2x4 on why you are fit and qualified for this job.
Yeah, the phrase that we like to use when we talk veterans over here is you want to distill your resume, not dilute it.
Absolutely.
If you have that 4-pager, you've diluted it with all the rest of the stuff, and then it's weaker. It feels weaker as you look at it. So again, no advice is 100% everywhere across the board. We're going to stipulate that. So just thinking about you, individually, how can what makes a job seeker in your mind stand out as an impressive interview? Are there any questions that that they should kind of always be prepared for, type thing, to really be ready for that interview?
There are a few, but I want to double down on a point you just made so that everyone hears and really embraces that. At the end of the day, you can never predict the preferences, style, personality of the person on the other side of the phone call table, et cetera. In other words, what Bob would want to hear might differ a bit from what Mark would want to hear, and so forth. And there is a bit of a guessing game. And the example might be that I talk about when I'm, speaking at conferences or giving workshops. You'll find, again, well-intentioned advice, but in my opinion, it's ill-advised, which is to dilute your personality out of your resume. In other words, if someone is applying to be a software engineer at Mile 2 and they love classical music, that could be on their resume as an interest. Some people have an interests field, let's say, and they might put classical music or soccer, whatever. Now, I've seen advice that says never put that on there. No one cares. It's not germane to the job. That's accurate that it's not germane to the job, at least directly. but it might be of interest to someone that's looking at the resume or having a conversation with you in an interview. And at the end of the day, we're all humans. And I might look at that and go, oh, I see you like classical music. Do you have a favorite composer? And now we're just building rapport and talking. Again, that's just me, though. Others may not want to see that. So I guess what I would offer is it is idiosyncratic. It does vary by individual. There are no or very few golden rules or hard and fast iron laws of applications and interviews. I'll try to give you a couple, though, from my perspective that I think are valuable. For one, no matter what role you're applying for, what job or organization, company, so on, know and be able to articulate why you want to work there. Not just why you want a job and not just why you want that particular job, but what is it about the organization? What is compelling? Why is there a gravitational pull? At the end of the day, I mean, most veterans are eligible to get a job at hundreds, thousands, depending. I mean, there's limitless opportunities that are out there. Now, hard to find. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say it's easy. It's not easy, but Mile 2 is one of many great software companies. So what is it about us that you're really interested in? And if you don't articulate that well, it often can come across as, I'm just looking for a job. That might be valid. It might be true. That's not a problem. But I love it when someone can explain why they really want to work on our team, serve our customers, and do the kind of work. Another one is going to be around how you stay sharp in your discipline. So what kind of professional bodies are you a member of? Do you follow certain experts in that field? Are you attending conferences or joining webinars? There's so many free ways to stay very sharp in your discipline. And if you don't have a good answer there, I will potentially view a non-answer as you're not trying to stay sharp in your discipline. And the moment you start a new job or the moment you stop actively learning something by way of formal education or training, you are on the path to obsolescence. So you've got to stay adaptive. You've got to stay hungry for learning new ways in your discipline, arguably even in other disciplines. So, I mean, it's kind of this is one iron law I'll give you. Here's the iron law. Bob, you ready? All right.
I'm ready.
Darwin was right in the respect that it's the most adaptable that survive, right? Kind of misattributed to say it's the strongest of the fittest. It's really the strongest of the most, the strength is in the adaptability. So if you're adaptable in a role, if you're adaptable at a company, you can learn new things. You can offer value in different ways or become an expert in your domain. That's what makes you stand out. And that's what makes you thrive once you're employed.
Yeah, and I would even say that a company like Mile 2, would you guys go? We take it back to the beginning of our conversation. You have a lot of great stuff on your website. You have a lot of great stuff on your LinkedIn. Like you're putting your stuff out there about what Mile 2 is about. So as a job seeker, it could be a lot easier when you're going to interview at a place like Mile 2 to know what you're getting into, as opposed to maybe a company that's doesn't put anything out there at all. I mean, there's a lot of crumbs out there that you could be picking up about the types of things that you might want to bring up in an interview, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of crumbs, and it's human nature is going to always be a bit of trying to guess of what the other person wants to hear. I mean, that's just human. That's just how it is. There's no doubt about it. And it is hard to also, kind of speaking back to the culture conversation, it's hard to know what a culture is really like. I would argue that you almost can't determine it from the outside other than kind of tip of the iceberg. Now, how do you overcome that challenge? If you're lucky, you can know someone that's inside an organization. Your network can vouch for their experience. They can vouch for their manager, their people leader, or the subculture that they're in, the team that they're on. That is worth its weight in gold. But normally, you're on the outside looking in, and you have to use a lot of cues and signals that are out there. What's the average tenure? What's the retention like? Does this organization win awards that are put on by objective third parties, for instance? There's lots of little ways that are, you can gain more information, but you can never really know the whole picture. It's just admittedly a challenge. Yeah.
And you said also in our pre-call there that things like referrals, which has always been one of the gold standards in hiring, referrals have been. You were making the case that in an age of even more AI stuff, that these referrals are taking on even more value for a company perspective. Is that correct?
So absolutely true. I think that we will see the value of a personal vouch, a referral, a network connection to grow And that is good and bad, I would argue. And I think the reason for it is that nowadays, at the click of a button, you and I could have AI craft a resume that is really compelling for a wide range of jobs, some of which we are in no way qualified to do. And they will show up in the inbox and the systems of all these companies. And so we, like everywhere else, we are awash with resumes. And some of them are, frankly, bots, and they're fake. They're just contrived. Some are from real people who are maybe marginally qualified, and it's hard to determine if it's a strong candidate versus a medium or weak candidate. But we just made an offer earlier this week, and it was someone that one of our other new hires knew from a previous workplace and vouched for this person. And so we view that as critical. That is a fantastic referral, and we were able to move fast. And within basically a week and a half, it went from just a basic early conversation to offer extended, offer accepted. And that's because of someone who knew someone. Now, here's the pro and the con for people that are listening. I always make the case that veterans underestimate their network. And it is, we all hear it. I'm sure you talked about it in TAPS class. It's been around in terms of advice since time immemorial. Your network is valuable. We all know that. But a veteran, whether they serve for 2 years and can barely remember the name of their commanding officer, to someone who has been in for 32 years, everyone has a network, but they often don't know either what those valuable players are in their network or how to reach out to them. And so I'll take the more challenging case. Someone, let's say, was in for 2 years, and they served in the Army's 1st Infantry Division. If they see it, let's say on LinkedIn or through ClearedJobs.Net or some other system out there, that there is an individual that's relative and important and could bring value, and they, let's say, served in the Army or the 1st Infantry Division, even better, reaching out and just saying, hey, look, I don't know you. I was in the 1st, the Big Red One, and I would love to talk to you about what it's like to work at Bank of America. And no harm, no foul. If the worst that happens is they don't write back, but they might write back. And that is someone that could be really valuable for you as an insider to kind of get some perspective. So that's something veterans undervalue because they just kind of assume that it's around the cocktail party networking. That's not the case. It's people that are in your professional domain, maybe someone that you worked with that has moved on and they know someone who knows someone. Those second, third order connections are really valuable. So I could talk all day. Sometimes I do, but that's really something where leverage that network. You've heard it. It cannot be overstated. And now in this age of AI, it's even more important in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down on that, and I agree. But I love how you tie that into the value in an AI age. That's a really critical thing. Hey, Mark, this has been a great conversation. I've really loved learning more about Mile 2 and learning about you and things like that. If somebody's on the podcast, listening to the podcast right now, and they want to reach out to you, they want to expand their network a little bit and say they caught you on a good podcast, should they just hit you up on LinkedIn? What's the best way for them to find you or Mile 2?
Yeah, my email is M as in Mark, which is my first name, and the last name Fogel, Fogel at Mile2, miletwo.us. And then we have a great company LinkedIn page. My LinkedIn is just my name. You know how LinkedIn is. We get a lot of spam through the messaging algorithm, but an email with a bit of a subject like, hey, heard you on the podcast, that can work wonders. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thanks for joining us. And we look forward to maybe catching up with you again, because you had a lot of great stuff to talk about. So thanks for everything, Mark.
Well, thanks, Bob. Thanks for what you do. It's a great podcast, and hoping that it makes a difference for folks. So thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Well, hey, Mark has already left the studio. And before we let you go, I just want to thinking back on that. That was such a great interview. Really, really enjoyed talking to Mark and learning about Mile 2. A couple of things that stood out to me. One, I like the way that they talk about using, lots of different people in their clearances, and they can move folks around, and a lot of opportunities that way. How they're still leaning into some remote work if they can. How they're available to do some skill bridge if it fits. What I really got out of talking to Mark was just how they're really focused on the honesty and doing things the right way if it makes sense. And that kind of comes down. And it went back to the values. He started talking about how the company has some very intentional values, and they put those into place. So, Mile 2, what a great organization. And Mark Fogel, what a great talent acquisition director. One of my favorite interviews in a long time. So I want to just say thanks to him, and let you guys know that thanks for listening to the Security Cleared Jobs podcast, Who's Hiring and How. If you are listening to us and you want to give us a like or follow us or join us for any of those podcast apps that you're listening to us on, whether it's YouTube or Spotify or Apple iTunes or whatever it is, you can follow us and you can share us with the folks in your network too. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.